Now, when we discuss knee pain that we've been basically going over the last couple of weeks, there are three main parts to relieving knee pain. If you've been following, the first one was foam rolling, the second one was stretching, the third one is activation. Now, out of all three of these, the one that's going to reduce the pain the fastest is going to be that foam rolling and stretching. Now, the activation is actually what's going to allow you to function better, move better, and not have that problem come back. But it's a really interesting concept because a lot of us have really started talking a lot about activation, and activation is essentially just a fancy-ish word for we're getting the muscles that we need to be firing working so that they can keep you moving in the right way. So the reason why moving in the right way is such an important thing is that when we are moving in the right way, our body's actually able to function properly, and we're going to be loading it properly and not wearing down other muscles. It's going to cause a lot of that knee pain. Now, one of the things we need to remember is that when we're trying to prevent knee pain through exercises, there aren't really any muscles that are in the knee. There are muscles that cross over the knee that kind of support it from the sides, but there is nothing really that's in the knee that contributes solely to the stability of the knee. Unfortunately, if our body is not moving properly, our knee becomes the central point for all of that pain. So there's a bunch of different areas that could be really causing the problem. Now, unfortunately, this clip is not going to be long enough for me to hit every single one of them, but there are going to be some that are really important that are going to actually move that needle the most and that are going to cover the most ground. Now, if we're targeting proper movement, we need to make sure that the person that we're targeting is actually able to do those movements. So we need to make sure that those exercises stay fairly simple. So it's great to use a bunch of different tools. So if you look at something like this, like that red box there to bring your foot up and elevate it, it's great for if you're doing a Bulgarian split squat or a rear foot elevated split squat, whatever you want to call it. That's a great exercise to do, but it might be a little advanced. It's a great knee stability exercise, but as I mentioned, probably a little advanced. Something else like that TRX, this yellow-black suspension trainer right there, is pretty popular. It can be used as well, but again, if someone's not able to do it properly or not use it properly, it may be too advanced. Something that I really like to discuss, I'm gonna shift over here, is this blue, I think it's there. It should be there, 1 second. Yeah, it's right there. That blue band right there, that little elastic is actually a great tool. It's very useful and we can use it for a bunch of different exercises. It's also something that's fairly basic in nature. It doesn't require a high skill set. It doesn't require a lot of background knowledge of how to move or do exercises. And generally when someone has pain in the knee, unless they're doing marathons or something like that, where it's just basically a lot of repetition, they're probably dealing, or you're probably dealing with something that is a little more basic and it doesn't require a significant amount of complex exercise to get better. It just requires some basic exercises, and the most important factor, which is consistency. If you aren't being as consistent with those exercises, like I mentioned in every single one of my clips, chances are you're probably gonna be running right back into that same problem. So let's get right into some of those exercises that are really gonna be helping us out. Now, the activation is actually going to be structured as kind of a workout. And the reason it's going to be kind of a workout is because this is what you're going to start by doing, and then eventually this will become your warm-up. Now, what I like to do is what a lot of my athletes is figure out what they're struggling with, find out what to do to make it better. So if they're struggling with knee pain, as you probably are if you're watching this, you will need to do activation exercises, but those are going to be basically just strengthening exercises at the beginning. They're going to feel like it because they're going to be tough, they're going to be challenging, and they're actually going to be we're actually going in a specific direction. Later on, those are going to be so specific for you that we're actually going to shift them over and make them an activation, and that's going to be part of your warm-up. That's going to be the area that you're going to want to work on before you start getting back into training or before you're doing a workout, a run, or whatever, because it's going to allow you to be in the right position for your entire competitive day, your entire workout. So what we need to do is really look at the muscles that we're going to be working on. Now, there's going to be a few muscles that we're going to be working on. First, we're going to be working on the core. The reason we want to work on the core is simply because the core is what actually supports and stabilizes everything that's going on. So every single muscle is either directly or indirectly controlled by that core anchoring or pulling off that core muscle. So if you are not able to fire your core properly, you will not be able to fire the other muscles properly and not be able to stabilize those other joints properly that are going to allow you to not have knee pain. Number two, we want to work on the hamstring. The hamstring is a muscle that is actually a bit of three things. It stabilizes the knee, it generates movement at the knee, it generates movement at the hip as well. So I'm gonna put those two together. And three, it actually acts as a postural muscle because it's actually stabilizing the way the hip is going, because it's fighting a battle between your quads and your hip flexors. So it's trying to pull down and stabilize. I almost forgot what I was saying. I was like, wait, yeah. So basically between those two muscle groups that it's trying to fight against, it's actually trying to stabilize that hip and it's allowing you to move properly. And finally, number three, the external rotators, or basically the hip stabilizing muscles. Those are the muscles that are gonna be on the side of your hip. So basically your glute med is one of the big ones that are gonna actually contribute to a lot of the directional control of that knee. So whether your knee is coming in or being held straight. So if we're able to get all of those muscles to fire, chances are is that the knee pain is actually gonna start getting a lot better, because it's going to directly influence our ability to stabilize and allow proper knee tracking. So what is knee tracking? Knee tracking is actually really interesting. Let me show you what that is right now. I'm gonna back up here. Knee tracking is actually what's allowing us to make sure that our knee is following, or our kneecap is going through a straight line. So a technical term is patellar tracking. So patella is the kneecap, tracking is the line and lane in which it's moving. Now, if you've been dealing with knee pain, there's a chance that you've been dealing with what we like to call poor patellar tracking. So poor patellar tracking means that your knee is not heading in the right direction, or your kneecap for that matter is not heading in the right direction, because it is being pulled by muscles on one side more than it is on the other side, or it's not coming down or not leveling off in the same place, and it needs to be more in line. So today we're going to work on how to stabilize the muscles that are going to allow this kneecap to follow that straight line and reduce that knee pain. The other weeks we did, so weeks 1 and 2, which I'm going to try to link up here. Week 1, wait a couple of seconds, and then go week 2 right there. You're going to start seeing, those are basically going to be showing you how to release the muscles, stretch the muscles out that are going to allow this to now be able to fall into a right position. Today we are going to try to make sure we keep it in that right position the entire time. So let's get right into that core strengthening. Now, very simple. This is one of my favorite exercises because you can do it at home, you can do it anywhere. You can do it at the gym. It's great because it can be made a lot more challenging. The dead bug is essentially one of my favorite exercises. That's what it's called, by the way, the dead bug. The dead bug is essentially one of my favorite exercises because it's so simple to do, or so simple to replicate, and it's so much easier to kind of use as a very common core training exercises because everyone can do it. It's very basic in nature, but it could still be made challenging enough that it actually becomes a really tough exercise to do. But I'm gonna show you a really basic way to do it. So, and I'm gonna actually show you a way to modify it if you can't do it that way anyway. So here's the first thing you're gonna need to do is basically just lie down. Am I zoomed out all the way? Yeah, I'm actually, I'm gonna step out here for you. All right, so basically what you're gonna do is pull up your legs. So you're getting a kind of a 90-degree angle here, 90-degree angle at the hip. And from here, lie your head back, keep your core engaged. So the way to do that is take the ribs, bring them down, make sure your ribs are down. You want to make sure that your hip is rolled back, but the one thing you don't want to do, sorry, I'm looking at the camera to make sure I'm doing this right? So basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that your low back is not crushing the ground. We're not trying to flatten out that back. We need to make sure we maintain that kind of a little bit of that arch. So when you're there, it's really trying to fight the battle between too much arch and no arch at all. We want to keep a nice leveled arch, which is what I call my neutral pelvis. Everyone calls it that, but that's what a neutral pelvis is. So basically from here, what we're going to be doing is bringing our hands up, and we're going to go opposite and opposite. So we're going to be going right hand first and left leg. I don't know why I kick both legs. We're going to be dropping them both down, coming as close as we can, bringing them back up. Now what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to make sure that as we're doing it, we're not kind of allowing our core to drop, we're not allowing our hip to drop, we're not letting this fall, we're not allowing this to drop down or pull back up or rotate or anything. We want to try to make sure that we keep a nice alignment from just the core itself and those hands and knees. So dropping one, bringing it back from here, alternating, going to the opposite side and coming back up. So really basic exercise. And if this is too challenging for you and you're struggling to try to figure it all out and still keep the core in the right place, That's okay. Let's take it a step back. Let's make it even easier for you. So we're gonna put the hands down, and from here, just dropping the leg, tapping, and switching to the other side. Now you'll notice that when I'm doing it, my knees are actually bent. I'm not straightening out my leg and pulling it back. My knees are bent. What keeping my knees bent will allow me to do is shorten that distance, make it a little bit easier on my core so I can focus on maintaining that neutral spine as I run through this exercise. Again, this is an exercise that's going to allow you to stabilize the hips from a nice stable hip. From there, what we can do is we can start strengthening the hamstring, which is the next exercise we're going to be doing. That was a terrible, terrible thing. That was terrible. God, I'm gonna have to do that again. Bear with me while I try to transition this. We'll pick it up and I'll just, third time, pick it up. And so now that we've gotten that core stable and we've kind of gotten that activation done for the core, now we're able to kind of carry what we just did and bring that over to activating the hamstring. So this is what that looks like. Now the bridge is the exercise we're going to be using. This is a very common exercise. I think I've probably put in like half of my posts on Instagram, talk about it all the time. The reason I like it so much is, again, it's so basic, but at the same time, we can build off it so well. So basically what you're gonna do is lie on your back, bend your knees. From here, you're just gonna lie back. I'm actually gonna scoot out here so you can see me better. Oh, I still got a lot of distance, okay? So from here, what we're gonna do is keep the feet flat, keep the feet, knees, and hip in line. And from here, putting pressure, driving our heels into the ground. From there, propping up and making sure that the entire time we've maintained that core contraction. If you come up, then contract, it's gonna be too late. You've already lost your posture from the start. So what we need to do is bring it down, contract from here, neutral spine, maintain that neutral spine as we come up. If we drive through the heels, what's gonna happen is we're gonna get the glute activation going, we're gonna get the hamstrings going as well, and these are the muscles that are actually going to be allowing us to stabilize a lot of that hip movement that is going to kind of help balance out that stress and take some stress off the front muscles, which are the quads. Now the quads tend to get really, really tight because we've got that pitched forward hip that I spoke about in last week's clip. And if you paid attention to what I was discussing when I showed it on the skeleton, one of the things that was actually happening was simply that the hip was pitching forward, and then from that pitched forward hip, we were getting a very tight quad. So the front of the leg was getting very tight, and it was causing that knee to not slide and move properly because it was yanking up on it too much, and it was doing a lot more work than it should have. And since that happens, what's actually happening is that that knee is starting to get a little sore, or the tendon that's running around that knee is getting sore. So once we've gotten that bridge mastered, what we can do is we can start heading on to the other muscles that are going to be on the side of the hip that are actually going to be stabilizing us, that we're going to need to be standing for, and we're going to need that little band. So let's go over there. So the hip activation exercise, so the hip muscles that are really going to be on the side of the hip, so the glute med, which is the big one that's going to allow us to stabilize and control that knee from falling in and out, is going to be trained or going to be strengthened or activated with that blue elastic as I mentioned before. So I'm going to go strap that thing on and essentially walk you guys through what that looks like. So essentially, once you've gotten this elastic on, you need it up around the knees. I know a lot of individuals put it around the ankles. The reason I don't throw it around the ankles is very simple, because I feel like if it's thrown around the ankles, what ends up happening, I know I had to kneel down, that was gonna be way too hard. The reason I don't put it at the ankles is very simple, because if it's at the ankles, it's not gonna be directly influencing. You're not gonna be feeling that stress in the knee, so you won't know, or you won't have a good idea, especially if you're starting on how to control that knee. It's not sending that stimulus up to the brain as well. So you want to be able to control that knee properly. So put the stimulus right there, and let's try to get that one segment to control that movement as much as possible. So essentially, once you've got it up above the knee, you need to remember the things that we discussed earlier. Maintaining that core strength and actually shifting our weight and pushing through that heel so that the hamstring can fire at the same time, and help give kind of some support to that hip so it's not being overpowered by the quad. So once we've done that, we're getting ourselves onto the heel, so we're putting our weight back on the heel. If you notice, I take a somewhat wider than shoulder stance. So what that means is my feet are just on the outside of my shoulders. From here, I'm not allowing my knees to cave in, I'm actively pulling out against them. And from here, all I'm making sure I'm doing is I'm keeping the weight back on my heels and making sure that I'm not lifting on my heels and shifting forward. I'm engaging the hip, I'm engaging the hamstring, engaging the glutes, getting that separation to happen, making sure that my core is contracted the entire time. I'm keeping my posture nice and tall, and from here, I'm just hanging out. So it's very simple. You're just hanging out here, keeping the knees separated, and eventually the muscle that's gonna be on the side of the hip right there is gonna start feeling, you're gonna start feeling that cramping, you're gonna start feeling that working, and that's what we're looking to do. Once we've done this, let's say 30 seconds, all you're gonna do next is add in some movement so you're understanding how to allow that knee to drop in and out. So you gotta anchor this knee, make sure this guy doesn't move, and then let that other leg drop in and out. So if my left knee is the one that hurts, I'm allowing it to drop in and out, and then just to make sure that the pain doesn't start appearing on my right side as well, anchor that side, move it in and out. If you notice that as you're doing it, you're kind of falling all over the place, let them both go at the same time. Build some base strength out of it. In a couple of weeks, we can progress to just keeping that knee stable and allowing the other one to move. We don't want to overdo it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're doing that, because if we're not actually controlling that leg and dropping it in, we're actually just kind of flopping all over the place. We're not really building any control. We're just kind of flowing through the movement and using our weight to kind of shift that knee in and out. We want to be able to make sure that we stay nice and sturdy and then shift it. Once we've mastered that, the following exercise we're going to do is a crab walk. So it's very simple. You're basically just shifting from side to side. So I'm taking a 6-inch step out, bringing it back in, and then essentially just side shuffling from one side to the other. What that's gonna do is that's actually gonna allow me to kind of actively control, move my body weight around, move my leg around, and actually stabilize on that knee. It's super basic, done very often, and actually becomes a pretty good activation exercise. If you guys liked what you saw today, hit that subscribe. I just did this is the like button. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a little comment, and let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next week. Actually, before we finish, I wanted to mention that I completely forgot to say to check the show notes. Everything's gonna be written down there, so the structured warm-up that you're gonna need to do. So basically the combination of the foam rolling, the stretching, and the activation exercise, which is essentially what we did today. I don't know how I forgot. It was literally the only thing I wrote down here that I needed to do today. So essentially, once you've gotten that done, once you've gotten through this and you've seen this, scroll down, check out in the show notes. There's basically the entire thing is right there. So it's essentially just drawn out for you. Very quick stuff. And the last little point I want to make before I can actually leave this time is be consistent. Make sure you're getting these exercises. These are the exercises you're gonna wanna do every single day. Do them every single day. Even if you don't have time, try to get them in at least once, preferably 3 times, as I'm gonna mention. If not, make sure you get these exercises in at least once to consistently beat down on it and make sure you're moving properly, and we're progressing, and then we can take it up to the next level and actually start getting some single leg stability and all that good stuff that's gonna allow you to actually improve your performance. Okay, see you guys next week. Bye.